All right. Well, if we're ready to get started, I think we will do that. So welcome back to day 2. I think everybody that's here today was here yesterday, right? So no new faces new to the program. So again, I am kind of monitoring the chat box. If you'd rather type questions in there, also feel free to interrupt me whenever. This does not need to be super duper formal. So today we're going to be talking about lessons 2 and 3 in the Journey 2050 curriculum, which covers nutrients and water use in agriculture. So before we get into it though, I kind of wanted to recap yesterday. So yesterday we talked about Journey 2050 as a program where you can find the information, how to sign up as a teacher on the website. And we kind of covered the basics of sustainability and that sustainability barrel. Does anybody have any questions lingering from yesterday? Did anything pop up in your head at night? Anything you'd like to cover?
Chrissy, I just have a question kind of in general, like, how do you know what to cut? And I don't know if that's the question to ask now, but, you know, this is me, the first time I'm taking this as well, so I'm learning a lot. But like, how do you know what to cut, or specifically in that first little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of videos and then just a lot of like recap information.
Right. That's a good point. So when I go through it, I for sure know that I want to keep the videos in because I think that those visuals are really helpful for kids. I think those videos are done really nicely. So I wouldn't want to cut the videos. And then the recap is generally where I start to cut things or condense slides. Some of the slides can get really wordy and you can maybe put multiple of those ideas into one slide, or if it recaps the same thing 2 or 3 times, you can maybe cut some of those out. That's kind of where I look to cut. Does anybody else have feedback on that too? Okay, yes, because these lessons, they recap the same thing a lot because they're really trying to drive a few points home. So when you go through those lesson plans, you might notice that for sure. Okay, if there's not anything else, I'll just keep trucking. Feel free to interrupt whenever. Okay, so lesson 2, we're talking about plant health. Okay, so we're gonna pretend to do this activity because it's easier to see in person than virtually. So, okay, each of these Journey 2050 lessons starts with a, yes, Catherine?
I was just gonna say, I don't think we can see your actual live PowerPoint.
Oh, really? Oh,
I think
okay.
we see just like the regular PowerPoint.
Oh my gosh, okay. Sorry about that. I have multiple screens going, so I thought it was sharing.
That's okay. Better catch it now than later, right?
Now can you see it?
There we go. Yes.
Aha. All right. So this is where we're at, plant health, lesson 2. Okay, so each of the Journey 2050 lessons starts with an activity that you can do with students that's kind of a physical thing, hands-on. And for this plant health one, you start with a plastic cup of water with these lines marked in the side with Sharpie, and you fill it up with water to the top. And you give the student a straw and you say, okay, you are a seed and you need nutrients to grow. And the water in this cup represents the nutrients that you need to grow. So, all right, as a seed, you germinate, you have enough energy inside the seed to germinate and start to grow. But after a couple of weeks, you're going to need some nutrients to keep growing. So I want you to drink 3 units of water. So then the whole class watches this kid drink 3 units of water. And then I say, okay, great. So now you're growing and the plant gets to the reproductive stage. So if you're a corn plant, you're putting on the ear. If you're a soybean plant, you're putting on the pods. And you need more nutrients. So now I want you to drink 3 more units of water. So they do that, they're drinking their water, staying hydrated, it's excellent. And then after that, the plant is harvested. So you talk about how that happens in the fall, and then a new seed will get planted in the spring. So then when the next seed has to start growing, there isn't enough water left in the cup for their full growing season. So that's kind of a visual a visual cue to kind of demonstrate how if you don't replenish the nutrients in the soil, they're depleted over time, and it impacts the next growing season's crop's ability to grow. If I explained that well. For this one, we use just plastic cups with the Sharpie lines on it. But if you go to like a fast food restaurant and grab a few extra straws that are wrapped in paper, they stay a little bit more sanitary when you have to lug them around in between schools. I would suggest doing that, just having a little bundle of McDonald's straws. That makes that easier. Okay, so the next thing on the list is to watch the video. So what I'm gonna stop here and switch over. Actually,
Nutrients are essential. We need them to
can you
produce
hear that
food.
okay?
They provide energy and support the growth and maintenance of our bodies. Without adequate nutrients, people become malnourished and cannot protect themselves from disease. We get our nutrients from plants and animals through the food we eat. Animals get their nutrients from the plants they eat, and plants take nutrients from the soil and elements from the air. Plants require 17 essential nutrients. The primary nutrients are nitrogen, N, phosphorus, P, and potassium, K. Each nutrient does many things for the plant, but the basics are this. Nitrogen is often called the builder. It is necessary for chlorophyll synthesis, which helps the plant stay healthy, green, and strong. Nitrogen helps make plant proteins as well. Phosphorus is referred to as the enforcer. It helps the plant trap and use the sun's energy to make food through photosynthesis. Plants also need phosphorus to grow healthy root systems. Potassium is often called the protector. Potassium protects our plants against diseases and helps them stay healthy when it is cold or dry because it helps move nutrients and water in the plant to where it's needed most. We may not realize it, but the soil beneath our feet is a vibrant source of life and nutrients. Soil is home to lots of living and non-living materials. This includes rocks, minerals, bacteria, and countless insects and organisms so small you need a microscope to see them. It takes a long time to make soil. As rock crumbles and erodes, the minerals mix with the organic material from the remains of plants and animals that decay over time, creating nutrient-rich soil. Soils are like a bank where nutrients and water are stored. Plants get the nutrients they need from the soil through their roots. If these nutrients are not replaced through the use of fertilizer and organic material, the bank is depleted and the soil will slowly become less fertile. Nutrient-deficient plants show symptoms like turning pale yellow in color and have poor growth. They're less able to compete with weeds, resist plant diseases, insects, or drought. These plant health-related problems may result in less food grown with lower nutritional value. Let me tell you about best management practices. Developed from science and experience, they're used to prevent soil depletion, improve production on current land, and make sure farmers aren't forced to move on to new fertile land elsewhere. As a result, more natural habitat is preserved. Best management practices range from simple planting of shelter belts or hedge trees to reduce soil erosion to more technical practices like the use of global positioning systems for the precise application of nutrients. Best management practices will be different depending on where you farm, but each practice allows farmers to do more with less. To maximize sustainability, farmers use best management practices such as the 4R Nutrient Stewardship system. First, farmers test the soil to find out what nutrients the soil needs, and then they select the seeds that will grow best in the area. Next, they can use the 4R Nutrient Stewardship system to precisely apply the nutrients required to grow a healthy crop. Farmers start with the right source to determine the correct combination of nutrients. Then they figure out the exact amount the plant needs. This is the right rate, not too much and not too little. The nutrients must then be applied at the right time of year and the right place in the field to increase crop uptake. Take a look at how the 4R nutrient stewardship system can help farm families. For example, in Kenya, farmers carefully apply fertilizers, plant material, or manure near the plant's roots using the 4Rs. Here, the nutrients are being applied on the surface, so they are at risk of being lost to the environment. Too many losses can cause negative impacts on the air, water quality, and habitats. In the long run, it's not sustainable. That's why best management practices like the creation of riparian areas and the use of the 4R nutrient stewardship system are so important. They can improve crop yields, increase soil quality, increase farm profits, and protect habitats. You will have the opportunity to help your farm families use best management practices to improve sustainability. Remember the sustainability barrel. Be thoughtful with your choices. And always keep in mind that every decision has more than one impact on sustainability.
Okay. So what did we notice from that video? Any aha moments right away?
You don't want to deplete your soil.
Don't want to deplete the soil. Any other major ideas?
I really like the breakdown of describing what nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium do as builder, enforcer, and protector. That's kind of a good, for me, visual about what they do.
Yeah, that is really helpful to kind of get a better idea. It's not just letters. They actually help the plant to do something, you bet. So the main thing we're talking about is soil health, and we need the soil to do stuff. So can somebody tell me why do we need to protect our soil? Why do we need to take care of our soil?
So we can continue to farm for future generations and feed everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So we need our soil to get stuff. So we need to grow plants in order to either feed us or to feed animals that feed us. So in order to do that, we got to take care of that soil that is our substrate for all of our plants. So we talked about the three main nutrients that we use a lot. Quick refresher, what are they?
Nitrogen, potassium,
Nitrogen,
and phosphorus.
there we go. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and PK. How are those nutrients replenished in the soil? So if plants are using them up, how do we put them back into the soil?
Some can use crop rotation, but usually you add extra fertilizer onto your soil.
And then another is what I found out today. My college students that I was helping teach, they very much were like poop. They like yelling poop.
That's right.
Like our other fertilizers are more, I guess, compostable fertilizers.
That's right. So there are multiple sources for our nutrients. We need to get them from someplace. We can do our fertilizers. We can do manure, the poop. We can do organic sources, whether that be like cover crops that we leave in the field or something else similar to that. They can help restore those nutrients back to the land. Okay, so here's kind of a scenario. You have two people. One of them is super duper healthy. They're eating a very balanced diet. They exercise. They keep themselves in good health. They have this other person who generally does not exercise very much, generally does not eat super great, generally less healthy. Okay, so if they both are impacted by the same cold, who is gonna feel it worse? Probably.
probably the person who eats poorly, doesn't exercise, and their general health isn't as good.
Yeah, that's right. So if their general health just isn't quite up to par, plants would be the same way. So if they're exposed to the same disease, somebody who is in good health, has proper nutrition, their immune system is in better shape, they're going to be able to fight that off better. They're going to be able to fend for themselves a little bit better. So there are many things that can do that, just that to a plant, many kinds of pressures. Does anybody want to shout out some of those pressures? What can impact a plant?
Weeds.
Weeds.
Weather.
Weather.
Insects.
Insects. Diseases too. But yeah, nutrient deficiencies, weeds, weather, absolutely. All right, so kind of the theme here we're talking about, just like that person who has a better diet gets better exercise, if we provide that same level of nutrition to those plants, they might do a better job. They can grow more in accordance to their genetic potential. They can outcompete those weeds better. They can better deal with those diseases. And just ultimately require less intervention and less work and effort from the farmer, from the human caretaker. So in this episode, in this lesson of the game, we're starting to talk about best management practices. So every farmer has choices. You can do one thing in many different ways. And sometimes there are things that aren't as good as other things. So we have to kind of differentiate what the best thing to do is and which one of these practices is the most sustainable. It impacts their community in the best way. So I talked about this in the video. So they call this the 4R nutrient stewardship kind of idea. So they're talking about using the right source of nutrient. That means getting the right nutrient on the field at the right time. So when the plant needs it. So for instance, if you put nutrients on in January, there's not really plant growing at that time. So the plant isn't using it right away. That leaves more of a chance for that nutrient to leave the field. So if you put it on right when it's going through that reproductive stage, right when it needs that extra boost of nutrient, that can be taken up faster and not leave the field. If you're putting it at the right place, so right where the roots are, like side dressing with our anhydrous ammonia, right? And using the right rate, so not doing too much. So it would leave that extra to wash away or too little to where the crop doesn't get what they need. So here's a visual. Hopefully you don't see things like this in the wild too much, but what do you notice? What are the differences between the one that had fertilizer and the one that didn't?
The one
It's
without
taller, it's greener, it looks more lush.
Yeah,
it's like fuller.
fuller.
I'd say it's even like blooming more than what the one with no nutrients added.
Yeah, I think you're right. So fertilizers are responsible for a large portion of the food supply. Without fertilizers, we would significantly reduce the amount that we'd be able to produce food. Okay, so we're going to get back into the gameplay here. Now, the first level was kind of a demo level and it was shorter. So this level is going to get more in depth. You're going to have more to do. It's going to ask you about which practice you want to use for your nutrients. You might see a map like this that kind of has the hot spots where it needs more nutrients than other places. But in level 2, the full level goes through 3 countries, Kenya, India, and Canada. That takes about 20 minutes. So today we're just going to play through Kenya just so you get a feel for how level 2 is. And then later tonight or tomorrow or whenever you can play through the whole level so you get a better feel for how it all goes. So again,
Chrissy, real quick, can you go back to the other slide?
This one, yeah.
Yeah. So everyone, do you see like that NPK bucket that's in the middle? So this is something I just want to point out because when I was playing with it last night, I noticed that like I thought I could only hold it in one spot, but that actually drags around and can move. So that way you don't like kill your crop like me. Anyway, maybe that's cheating, but just to let you know that that'll drag around.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you drag that to the places where it needs more. And then again, we talked, the timer is up here, and then your sustainability barrel is down here. Okay, so we can go ahead and start playing again. I'll stop sharing my screen. I think again, you can go to journey2050.com, or if you have the app on your phone or your tablet, you can play that way too. We'll do level 2. If it plays a video, you can just X out of it and then stop after Kenya. Okay, so while some folks are finishing up, let's chat a little bit. How did that go for you?
My food production's still too low. Or at least it's the lowest one.
That's still the limiting factor, huh? Okay.
Mhm. But I also just planted beans because I knew that they grew fast and I was trying to get a lot of food, but it didn't work. That plan did not work.
Okay, well, something was tried. That's good.
I did better today than I did yesterday, just because I knew to watch that timer and that I was going to be responsible for other things.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So you learned kind of how the game went. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so the new thing in this level was about the nutrient practices. So what nutrient practice worked best for you, or what did you choose to do? Did anybody do no nutrients? Maybe not.
I mostly did like the whole, like you just put it all over the field.
Okay.
Mainly because like I saw that in the video and it kind of looked like that's what they were already doing in Kenya, but maybe not. Maybe they also do the one where it's more specific.
Mhm. So there were kind of pros and cons to that one, right? So it was easier to use to do the one where it's an even throughout the field, and so it was cheaper too. So if you're really in a pinch and you don't have the funds to do the really high tech one, that makes sense.
Jamie, which
anybody
one
do-
did you use? Oh,
I chose like the Cadillac version of the nutrients because I just wanted to make sure that I had good soil health. That was my goal, I guess. And then I planted beans twice on one of the fields and corn on the other one, but I too was super aware of the time. So after I harvested the beans twice, I bought some trees, I think, but I let the time go without starting it again because I didn't want to get halfway done and then not be able to harvest my crop.
That's really good. Yeah.
Jamie, I was gonna say like it's kind of interesting because I did some of the same. Like I noticed I had a very little time left and I could have planted my crop again, but then I decided not to because I'm like, it's just gonna be a waste of money because I can't harvest.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
I can get kids a lot. Okay, so did you see positive or negative impacts based on the nutrient strategy that you used? So we talked about cost a little bit. We've talked about food production a little bit. Did you notice any of those connections in your farms?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I noticed because before, I was dumping it on the whole field, and then I decided, well, maybe I'll try like the specific one. And I noticed that the crop when I did it with the specific, it actually grew quicker than if I just dumped it on the whole field, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if anyone else saw something like that or saw any differences.
That's a good observation. So yeah, there's differences in cost, there's differences in how your plants perform, so that can impact your sustainability in food production, and also can impact your sustainability in your economic portion of it too. So big question, can farmers apply nutrients while still farming sustainably? You can nod your head or shake your head. Yeah, I think we're all pretty sold on that, right? There are ways to do things well and do things correctly. So that's kind of the selling point here. We really need nutrients in our soil to keep growing our plants. We just need to do it in a way that makes sense. All right. So congratulations, you finished lesson 2. Now we can move on to lesson 3. So this one's all about water. All right, so the introduction activity for this one. All right, so this is a really funny one, and it's also kind of a lot of work. Okay, so imagine you come to a school and you bring your whole like rubber yellow rain duck like raincoat with the hat and the boots, and you call on a student to come up in the front and put all this stuff on. You have a water jug like this one, or a 5-gallon bucket full of water. And you tell the whole class, okay, so this bucket represents all of the water on Earth. And all of the water that we have access to, I'm gonna dump on this kid's head. And everybody goes nuts. They're like, oh my gosh, this kid's gonna get soaked. But you end up dumping 3 tablespoons of water on his head. He barely even gets wet. So I'm not gonna do that today because I don't wanna get my computer wet, but that's kind of the idea. There is an alternative version of this where you have like a measuring cup. You don't have to walk into class with a 5-gallon bucket full of water. It's less funny, but it's much easier to do, much easier to like bring your materials to class. So that is written into the lesson plan as well. Okay, so we'll move on to the video. Getting all of the screens in the right order. Okay.
Imagine the Earth. All that blue that you see is water, and it makes up 70% of the Earth's surface. However, we can only use a tiny fraction of it. Only 2.5% of Earth's water is fresh water, found in glaciers and polar ice caps, groundwater, surface water such as lakes, ponds, and rivers, and in the atmosphere. And only 0.3% of that is accessible for us to use. Water is essential, not just for drinking and keeping clean, but through our lives. For example, to make cars that get us to school, and to grow the food that we eat. We can't live without water. And as our population grows, there is even more pressure on our limited supplies. Today, about 2.5 billion people live in regions with an uncertain supply of fresh water. By 2050, with economic and population growth in those areas, more than half the world's predicted population will face water stress if nothing is done. Water is essential and needs to be conserved and protected. Water is an essential part of agriculture. In fact, nearly 3/4 of the world's fresh water is used in agriculture to produce the food, fiber, and products that we need to live. For example, it takes 435 liters of water to grow enough wheat to make just 1 loaf of bread, and about 11,000 liters to make a pair of blue jeans. As our climate changes, the weather is becoming more extreme and unpredictable. In some parts of the world, the climate is becoming drier, and in others, it is becoming wetter. But the unpredictable availability of water is making it harder for farmers to grow crops, which puts our food supply at risk. Through advances in technology and improved best management practices, farmers try and ensure that crops have the right amount of water while maintaining water quality. It's about using the right amounts at the times when crops need water most. Too little and seeds can dry up, and too much, water is wasted as runoff. For example, in countries like Kenya, where rainfall can be unpredictable, farmers collect and store rainwater to reuse when it's needed most. They also utilize drip irrigation, where water is delivered close to plant roots through a pipe, drop by drop, minimizing water losses from evaporation and increasing yields by as much as 100% compared to plants only receiving rainwater. In countries like Canada, Pivot irrigation is a great way to apply water at specific times of the day, and technology plays a key role in water management. Farmers can use their phones to gain information on the soil moisture content of their crops, get live weather updates, and calculate how much water is needed for the day, remotely turning their irrigation systems on and off to use water more efficiently while increasing crop yields. Another great best management practice is conservation tillage, which involves covering at least 30% of the soil's surface with crop residues left after planting. This helps slow water movement, reducing the risk of erosion. It also provides more organic matter, which helps improve soil health. If the soil's health is improved, it will hold more moisture and grow better crops. Landowners can also improve water quality by preserving wetlands and riparian areas, which are spaces between land and the waterway, ideally filled with native grass, bushes, and trees. These areas have many benefits, such as helping filter nutrients that are collected as the water runs over the land, helping control water during floods, and providing habitat for animals. Through innovations such as new seed varieties, scientists are developing crops that are more resistant to changing climates, so we can grow crops even when the growing conditions are not ideal. Sharing best practices and providing everyone with the tools they need to use water more efficiently. It is important that every single day of the year, we all take the time and make the effort to conserve and protect our precious water supplies.
Okay. So what were some of the themes from that video? Where's my searching screen at? So we're talking about water. And in Iowa, Iowa is different than a lot of the countries we're talking about in Journey 2050, right? We don't irrigate really much in Iowa. We're not as worried about conservation of water in that sense. But in a lot of places around the world, that is something that people need to think about. So they're spending more time in this lesson talking about different kinds of irrigation. There's drip irrigation where the water is right close to the plants. There's center pivot irrigation, which is more like a sprinkler system. And then there's the flood kind of irrigation, which is used more in like Arkansas with higher clay content soils to make things like rice. So there's different things that can be done in that manner. But we also use water for other purposes, like we need our water for our livestock. We have lots of livestock in Iowa. We also have to use it for cleaning and sterilization. So dairies use a lot of water, just making sure their animals are clean and healthy. And then we also use water to process our food, to again for cleaning and processing in that way. So this part I think is pretty interesting. So when we talk about conservation tillage, I find that to be a particularly useful concept when we're talking about water conservation in Iowa, because the way that climate change has impacted Iowa, I think of it more in like, it goes in fits and spurts. Like we think about 50, 60 years ago, people talked about how there would be a nice gentle rain every few days, and that was just what the crops needed. And then in more recent years, we're seeing no rain for weeks at a time, and then 6 inches in half an hour. And that can cause some issues with crops needing water at a specific time. But with conservation till, no-till, more of the soil structure is kept intact, which helps the soil retain more water over time. So if the soil structure is damaged with lots of tillage, it can become harder faster. So that I find to be particularly interesting. They also talked about riparian areas in this video. I think here in Iowa, we talk about like buffer strips more. I think that's a very similar concept. So that would be areas like this that's circled here. So those just natural vegetative areas along creeks, ponds, stream banks that help soak up some of that extra nutrient that might leave the field. So again, here in Iowa, we're not doing much of the irrigation systems on our own land, but again, lots of other people are, and then figuring out what's best for that crop, what's best for that soil type, what's best for that climate to use things as efficiently as possible. Okay, so this is not just an agriculture thing though, about using water effectively and sustainably. So here's kind of an interesting graphic, ways we can conserve water differently. So over here in the doing it right, people are being mindful about what's going into the storm drains, they're picking up waste, they're collecting their rainwater. Over on this side, people are dumping things down in the storm sewer. That's maybe not the best idea. They may be watering their lawns too much. They might be using too much Roundup on their lawns, on the dandelion that really doesn't need that much Roundup. Just things like that that we all kind of do in towns as well as in rural areas. This idea is also illustrated really well with, I think certain extensions have like water tables, and they put like pollutants in different parts of the landscape, and you can see where the runoff is coming from different areas on the landscape. Or like Water Rocks has like a big, like a marker board kind of thing where like different puzzle pieces have different things that contribute to the runoff. That all ties into this idea really well. Okay, the next step is playing the game. But before we get into that, do you have any questions about the water stuff content? Okay, so in this level of the game, you're just going to be making sure that your plants are getting the right amount of water and that your farm is conserving water appropriately. So again, there are 3 countries in this level, but for time's sake, just play through Kenya. You might have to, if you still have the level 2 part up, you might have to exit out of it and click on level 3. But do go ahead and do that. We didn't really talk about this before, about those funding opportunities where you can give your profits to different places. Has anybody done that yet? No? I think there is. What was that? Sorry.
I would say I did at one point. I don't remember what it was to though. I just clicked a button.
Fair enough. I think there is an undo button, so you can like play around with it to see how that changes your sustainability barrel.
Yeah, it didn't really change anything because my limiting factor is still production.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm just pokey at it because I'm not getting to some of these areas that the rest of you seem to be.
It can be different, yeah.
I also know though, Marcia, if you click off of the web page, it'll pause the game for you. So that might be it. Is that like, so when you hear us talking, like you switch over and so then it stops the game before you get to that page that's up on the screen that Chrissy's showing, which is good for students, right? You tell them to click off of it and they don't get anywhere.
Yeah, they can give us some extra time. Okay, so what did you notice from this level? Anything stand out to you? What worked, what didn't?
Did everybody get a rain? Oh, it rained for me. That was so nice. Because I ran out of water and it was only like halfway through the time and I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Last night I was playing around with it some and I got hailed out. That was not good.
Yeah, that's tricky. That's a good learning experience for kids though. I mean, weather events, there's not really a whole lot you can do about. You can't always protect yourself against hail. We talked about this a little bit. Some limiting factors. Does anybody have a different limiting factor than crop production? That can vary a lot and that can change later on too. So whether or not it rained for you, which it sounds like there was some variation there, that can impact if you had enough water for your crop this season, right? And you talked about how the hail impacted your crop. So if you didn't get rain, what could be something that the farmer in that location could do to help improve the crop production over time? They talk about one specific thing in the video that farmers in Kenya can do.
I don't remember from the video, but when I was running out of water, I looked to see which crop took less water and planted that instead. It didn't really help me because I still ran out of water, but I was at least thinking of that.
That's still a really important consideration though, you bet. Which one uses less water? The game also eventually gets to a point where you can invest in rainwater collection. So that was kind of what I was thinking about, collecting the rainwater to be able to apply it later if you don't get that rain when you need it. Okay, so they're bringing back the ripple effect idea. So we talked about some of those investments that pop up, and some of those can look different person to person. If you did invest in that rainwater collection system, what might the ripple from that be? How could that impact some other things?
Without the rain, you might not have gotten the production in your crop where you didn't have enough to sell or enough to make enough food for everyone that needed it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if you have the ability to store water and use it when you need it, then your crop production can go up. That can improve how much food is available in your community. That can change how much revenue is going into your community, going into your family, those kinds of things for sure. Okay, so wrapping up here. Water is a natural resource that is critical to agriculture and really every other strain of life. Though Earth is made up of water, only a very little bit of it is actually usable. The vast majority of the water we have on Earth is salt water or trapped in glaciers. So we need to be mindful about being efficient with that water, how we use it, not being wasteful, taking care of the water that we have available so that we can continue to use it. And different parts of the world have different issues related to water. We don't have to worry about not having enough water. It's muddy all the time, usually, but other parts of the world don't have that same thing to worry about. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. That's the end of my slides. What questions do you have about lessons 2 and 3?
How long does it normally take for them to go through the whole thing? So we just did Kenya tonight.
Yes.
For both, but what about all of them normally?
Yeah. If you play through all 3 countries, it usually takes about 20 minutes.
Chrissy, do you normally combine levels?
Yes, carefully. It's really easy to combine lessons if the students have a block schedule. If they have an hour and a half, then you can easily do 2 lessons in one go. If you want to do 2 lessons in 45 minutes, then you need to kind of significantly cut back on your slides so they have about 40 minutes to do the gameplay. That's the kind of the limiting factor. But it can be done.
Can you tell us about how long each gaming takes per lesson?
Yes. So for lesson 1, the game takes about 5 or 7 minutes. It's pretty short. For the rest, for lessons 2 through 4, it's more like 20 minutes. Lesson 5, I would say, is around 10 minutes or so. There's 2 different games with lesson 5. And then lesson 6 is significantly shorter. I would say that's maybe around 5 or 10 minutes too.
Yeah.
All right. So for your homework tonight, I would say play through the rest of levels 2 and 3 so you see how it kind of changes in India and Canada and kind of the different solutions and different problems they have there. But otherwise, enjoy your evening and I'll see you tomorrow.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Have a good day.